Stadium by a final of 20-16, just 1 point different than that playoff loss last year, 19-16. Titans fall to 7-4. Bengals improve to 7-4. The good news, the Ravens also lost stunning fashion to the Jaguars, who went for 2 in the final seconds to take the lead and ultimately win the game. So the Ravens stay behind the Titans in the AFC pecking order right now. Titans still in that number 3 position based off of a tiebreaker. To the phones we go. Let's start with Eric. Eric, thanks for the call. Welcome to Titans Talk.
Hey, Steve. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and always it's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks. You as well.
Listen, one of the things you talked about, Ben Jones being out, also what didn't help, too, was Danico Archer was out, as well as the kicker, Randy Bullock. So when you had 2 other key players like those guys being out as well, it doesn't help as well. But also I thought defensively, we were not great. We were not terrible. We were just so-so. We did get a sack, but the problem was Joe Burrow, even though passing yardage-wise he didn't have more passing yardage than Ryan Tannehill, he was able to beat us with those off-script plays. In fact, he was able to scramble because he had, in fact, as much rush yards as Derrick Henry. And was just able to throw him a run. He was bound and determined to get rid of the ball quickly and got it to some receivers and the running back we had not much heard of. And that's another incredible thing about this game, the fact that they were able to beat you without Joe Mixon, who was their best running back, and Jamar Chase was their best wide receiver, which says really a lot about this talent on this team and how this team definitely took this game, because they definitely were ready and bound and determined to win this game. I mean, they fought, and you got to give props to them for that. As far as offensively, here's the thing that just really was just bothered me, really disgusting to me. Our offensive line play was atrocious yesterday. I mean, I'm telling you, Dylan Ravens was called for a couple of false starts calls. I think even Ryan Tannehill was called for a false start. We had that where we either false starting or holding calls when we had made some significant gains and got backed up after, some drives where we were throwing the ball deep. And Daniel, give him credit, he certainly was able to deliver some deep passes, but we would get bogged down. And, of course, you had to settle for field goals. 1 you missed, and 2 you made. And you just can't do that against this team because the margin of error for this team is so thin. And also, what didn't help, too, we had a couple of drops because I think Traylon Burks had a drop. The pass he should have called, and I forget there were 1 or 2 other balls that should have been called that were dropped as well. And you're right. I mean, so far against the better teams, we've lost. And we still, like I said, got the Eagles coming up. And the A.J. Brown revenge game is certainly he's going to be motivated, going to get the Eagles motivated for that game, that crowd up there, as well as the Chargers who are fighting for the playoff lives and the Cowboys. So it's just frustrating because I think that's what most Titans fans are feeling is you're going to win the division, but they'll probably want it done because there's also another team that you didn't mention that you could face too is the Miami Dolphins, who have been red hot. Baltimore, I mean, it's just, and I think that's the frustrating thing is just, we just can't make the plays and do the things we need to win games. I'll get off and get some other callers. Take care, and you have a great evening.
All right, Eric, thank you. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving as well. I'll push back a little bit that this team has largely made the plays to win games. But, again, it comes down to the teams that they're doing it against. They've won 7 games. They deserve a ton of credit for that. But they're not beating the best teams out there. They're not beating the Bengals. They're not beating the Chiefs. They're not beating the Bills. We'll see what happens this weekend in Philadelphia, but they're certainly not favored going into that game. That's the issue right now. And it would be different if you back this up in the progression of a Mike Vrabel team and you went to, say, 2018 or 2019, and this is what you were seeing from the Titans, I think you'd be happy because this would be a team that would be trying to build a winning culture, that would be trying to get to that level where it could be considered a contender. The Titans have been there and done that. They were in the AFC Championship game in 2019. They've won the division each of the last 2 years. They're going to do it again. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. The progression right now, the way they've paid the guys that they've kept, it's all about winning the Super Bowl. That's the goal for this team. And the problem is, it doesn't look like a team that can truly contend. Yes, they're going to win the division, but can they win in the playoffs? And can they win multiple games in the playoffs? Because that's ultimately what you're talking about. They could beat, if it was the Bengals again in the playoffs, Obviously, we know the game's going to be close. Could the Titans win one? Absolutely. So they could win a game in the playoffs. Could they even maybe go on the road and steal one? Like if they got the Dolphins in the second round, could they go there and win? I don't think they'd be favored. But could they take their experience of the past few years up against that Dolphins team and maybe go win one? Yeah, I think they could. But could they do both of those maybes that I just laid out and then go to like Kansas City? Or get a Buffalo in the AFC Championship game and win? On top of that, now you're really pushing it. And there's a whole nother game after that to win the ultimate prize in the Super Bowl. And that's the thing, is to be an elite team, you've got to feel like no matter who you match up with, you can win. Right now, it feels like the Titans are going to be in a matchup battle. They're going to have to create a bunch of turnovers. It's not necessarily going to be a fluke, but the cards are going to have to fall for them to win a game. And then another game. And then another. And you just can't do that in the NFL playoffs because you're not going to be able to do it over and over and over again when you need that many things to fall for you. That, to me, is the concern. And that's what's such a big difference from last year is the Titans last year beat the teams at the top of the conference, at the top of the league. And so when you went into the playoffs last year, you felt like this is a Titans team that can win, especially with home field advantage. All that's probably going to be different this year. And that's a really frustrating thing. And one more thing about another point that Eric, the caller, made there about the Bengals doing it yesterday without Joe Mixon or Jamar Chase. That's impressive. But you know what's also impressive is the other guys who are on the field when they're not there. T. Higgins is a better receiver than anybody the Titans have. Anybody. Tyler Boyd's a solid receiver. Irvin's solid receiver. Hayden Hurst, really good tight end. I mean, there are weapons there for Joe Burrow, even without Mixon and Chase. If you take Derrick Henry away like the Bengals did yesterday in the running game, the Titans don't have many options. Treylon Burks is stepping up. He's starting to look a little bit more like a guy that you can count on to make big plays each week. But if that's it, man, whew, your scheme better be awesome. Because there's just not a lot of talent there to make plays to. And I will say, because I said this after the Green Bay game, Ryan Tannehill in the Green Bay game played for the first time in a long time like a guy who could elevate the players around him. That he actually made those guys better. And you saw a bunch of guys have great games. Austin Hooper had a great game. Robert Woods had a great game. Treylon Burks had a great game. It was great all the way through the passing game. And I think you give a lot of credit to Ryan Tannehill for that. Yesterday, you do not. Yes, he threw for some yards. He made some nice throws. But yesterday was a game where the 2 or 3 or 4 plays he could have made that would have elevated those guys or would have taken the Titans to the next level or maybe got them a touchdown or 2 in the red zone, those types of plays, he didn't make them yesterday. And that's the other thing when you look at the Bengals. Because last year in that playoff game, Joe Burrow had very few opportunities to make plays because of the duress he was under, because of the Titans' pass rush. But when he had the opportunities, he made the plays. And that's why they won the game. Because Joe Burrow could elevate a bad offensive line to get them to the finish line. Yesterday, Ryan Tannehill couldn't do that for the Titans. And those are all the differences you look at. And you'd be right to maybe criticize this roster makeup at this point. John Robinson has some explaining to do in terms of how they've gotten to this place. And oh, by the way, we're going to talk about it all week long, but it's A.J. Brown week. Maybe the best and most important weapon they had on their offense last year now plays in Philadelphia. Derrick Henry's great. Derrick Henry's absolutely great, and he will always be the focal point here. But you can take running backs out of it if you want to try hard enough, and you can force a team to pass it on you. You couldn't do that last year here because A.J. Brown would destroy you. You can do it now because I don't know if you fear anybody that Tannehill's throwing the ball to now. And that's a problem for Mike Vrabel, for Ryan Tannehill, Todd Downing, Derek, everybody over there. That's a problem. Fundamental problem of the roster makeup. There's just not enough weapons. Back to the phones we go. Let's say hello to Rennie. Rennie, good evening.
Hey, how you doing, Steve? How are you?
Good. Welcome to the show.
You made a good point there. It's actually a point I was going to make. I think the true test is going to be next week when they play Philadelphia. I think that it's going to show. You see, the Titans need to tighten up, and they need to show and play good against a good team. You know, they got a great defense and all that, but you got to play defense. Like yesterday, against the Bengals, they had to play defense, and they didn't play defense. They couldn't hold Joe Burrow. You got to be able to hold Josh Allen. You got to be able to hold Burrow. You got to be able to hold Jalen Hurts next week. You can't play good against the bad teams and vice versa. You understand what I'm saying?
I do. I will say this, though, that the defense, even yesterday, they gave up more X plays than they wanted. They didn't get to Burrow as much as they did last year in the playoff game, only 1 sack. But they still only gave up 20 points against an explosive offense. That should be enough in this league to give you a great chance to win. And they had a great chance to win. But the offense couldn't make the plays. They couldn't score the touchdowns in the red zone. When you look at this team and their shortcomings, it's not the defense. Sure, the defense could have made a play or two more yesterday. But the offense is consistently underperforming what other teams around the league are doing.
Yeah, you got to establish a running game against the good teams too. You know, like Cincinnati, Philadelphia next week. They establish the running game. I live in Nashville, but I'm from Florida. I'm a big Dolphins fan, and Tua, they're great. You know, the Dolphins are great this year. I love Tua when favorite player the Dolphins are. I grew up. I saw the 17-0 Dolphins when they were 17-0 in 72, and all that. And I love the Dolphins, but Tua cannot play in cold weather. So if they have to play Buffalo or even the Titans over here in cold weather in the playoff game, they won't be able to beat them. You can't play on 50-degree weather. I don't know if you know that, but
yeah. Well, the Dolphins have never played well in temperatures below like 40 degrees.
Yeah, if they have to go to Kansas City, Tennessee, or Buffalo, that's it. They're not going to win. He can't play in cold weather. But that's my. I think the Titans need to, like you said, they have to show something here coming up. You know, the last part of the season.
Yeah,
and they have to show that they can hold against a good team.
Exactly.
Philadelphia, starting with Philadelphia next week.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Remy. We appreciate the call. They're going to have their opportunities, but at this point, you start to have a feeling of who these teams are. In September and October, you're still kind of feeling it out. We got a pretty good idea of who the Titans are. They're going to show up every week. They're going to bring their lunch pail. They're going to make it a 4-quarter game. They're not going to get blown out. They're going to be in a battle. They're going to have a chance to win. But here in December, this is when the best teams start to elevate their game and get ready for January in the playoffs. And the Titans are going to have a handful of opportunities here to show that they can play with the NFL's best teams and give you a reason to believe that they can go on a run in January. And if they can't, you're going to think that it's going to be a very quick trip to the playoffs once again. I want to sneak in one more here before we go to break because Gordon has been waiting for a while. Gordon, we appreciate that. Welcome to Titans Talk.
Well, thanks, Steve. I was looking at, first of all, I think sometimes a team is not as good as its record. And I think that's the case this year. And it's exactly because of what you said. We've beaten a lot of weak teams. And, Ben Jones being out, obviously that makes a big difference, especially in the run game. But, you have a next man up mentality. And right now, our next man up isn't almost as good as the guy he's replacing. And that's what you need. You need depth. So one guy goes down, it's like, don't worry, we got this one coming in. And I don't think the Titans have that. as far as the run game, which is stalled the last 2 weeks, yeah, I don't know. I don't seem to remember a whole lot. Well, we had play-action plays, but I think when the run game is stalled, you got to have more of those, and maybe a running back draw, even a quarterback draw if Ryan is healthy, and I know he's still nursing a bad ankle, but try a running back draw, more play action. And this is something I've seen. I only saw it a couple of times yesterday, but I've seen it in other games too, where the timing of the handoffs to Derrick Henry seems to be about a half second off, where Ryan has his hand extended and waiting for Derrick to take the ball. And I think that they're going to have to work on their timing a little bit on that as well. And I don't know what we can do this year, but I think the Titans need to find a dynamite kicker. Randy Bullock is good from inside the 40. I think this guy Shudek is good from inside the 40 as well. But they got to find a Justin Tucker. They've got to find a guy like what's his name from the Bengals? I can't even think of it right now.
Evan McPherson.
Yeah, Evan McPherson. Or even a Robbie Gould for the 49ers. And they don't have that. Look, I'm hoping we go all the way this year, but after yesterday, I'm not optimistic. The Titans this year have, in 11 games, they failed to score 21.7 times. Mm-hmm. And I think there's only been maybe 2 or 3 teams that have scored more than 21 against the Titans. So they could be a 9-2 team instead of a 7-4 team if they would just get an offense.
Oh,
but I don't
absolutely.
know what you do at this point in the year.
Yeah, I mean, you can basically, and we appreciate the call, Gordon, you can basically flip 3 plays around in the season, and the Titans could be 10-1. That's how close they are. But to his point, 20 points is kind of the magic number. If the Titans can get to 20 points, they're absolutely going to win. If they give up 20 points, they're in trouble. Because it's not clear their offense can get to 21 or 22. And that has just been the bottom line of this team. I'll disagree on the one thing, is I think they're exactly what their record is at the moment. Their record says they're 7-4. I think they've been better than 7 teams on their schedule, and they've won those games. I think they've been in some toss-up games against other good teams that are likely to find their way in the playoffs, and they haven't won any of those games. We'll find out if they can do that down the stretch, but right now it looks to me, the simplest way to describe it is the Titans look like a playoff team that has no chance of winning the Super Bowl. They look like a team that'll be there in January. Maybe they can win a game, but they're not a real threat to be around at the end. When you look around at the other teams, the team they're going to see this weekend in Philly, Kansas City for sure, Buffalo, even though they're probably the 5 or 6 seed in the conference at the moment, Bengals after what they did last year, Ravens given what they've done in the past. I think the Vikings based off how they're playing. I think the Cowboys based off the way they're coming around. A bunch of these other teams that are going to the playoffs feel, for whatever reason, based off of this season or past success, feel like when they get there, they can do some damage, whether they will or not. When you look at this Titans team, I don't know how you see a team that can do damage. They're going to be there. They played well enough and are good enough to be there. We'll find out over the next couple of months if they can elevate their game to get to a place where they can compete once they are there. We'll take a break. Come back with more of your phone calls. 737-7767, the number. This is Titans Talk on News Channel 5+.